How are we doing today? Very hot, I'm imagining. But everyone looks so, so, so beautiful. Welcome to YLC's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful event where we're going to have lots of good conversation. We're going to have a lot of empowerment. We've got beautiful panels. How's everyone doing today? Is everybody ready to have a good time? Is everybody ready to be empowered? Is everybody ready to go back with so much information that they can take into their personal lives and also to improve the lives of others as well? I am your host today. My name is Mo, a.k.a. Moa, a.k.a. Mo Chunks. I was saying to one of the vendors today that I'm getting used to introducing myself as Moa because it has more meaning. But then again, it's like it's personal to me. It's what my friends and family call me. But Moa is good because it has more meaning. So my name is Moa, a.k.a. Mo Chunks. So welcome. So without further ado, I want you to just find one or two people in the room. Just say hello to them, find out their name and what they do. Just a little icebreaker for about 2 to 3 minutes. Okay? Rise up with your beautiful selves. Meet someone in the room. I know it's warm, but we have aircon. It's hot, so... Hi, I think we met Tasha.
Tasha, yes.
What do you do?
So
I obviously have your bio, but...
I'm a psychotherapist and a content creator and doctor.
Let's round up, guys. I'm going to ask one or two people to tell me who they met and just introduce them really quickly. Let's round up, guys, because of time. All right, if you'd like to, give us some feedback, just put your hands up for me, please. Don't be shy. I know we hate the whole we are family here, but we are a family. Yeah, who did you meet? Have the mic.
Hi everyone, I met Mary. I met Mary, really lovely girl, and she is a social worker, so really interesting. I'm quite passionate about that, so we connected.
Okay, round of applause, guys. Anyone else? Okay, yeah. Tell us your name and who you met.
Oh, okay. So my name is Tashara, and I'm... Hi, hello. And so this is Kessie.
Say hi, Cassie. Hi, Cassie.
And Kessie is a filmmaker, and she's made a film about a young person who has experienced domestic abuse, and we're going to network a bit later on about something else in a bit. Yeah, so...
Thank you so much. Round of applause, guys. One more person from this side, maybe. This side is warmed up. We need this side. Okay, wonderful.
I met the lovely Magda, and she worked.
Hi, Magda. By the way.
She works in social value, and yeah, she's amazing. She's really amazing.
Thank you so much. And because Courtney's a speaker, one more person. You guys thought you got away with it. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot because I don't like when people do that to me. Go on. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Natasha and I met lovely
Hi, Natasha.
and I met lovely Christine.
Hi, Christine.
She's from America and originally Haiti, is that correct? And you own a salon and you've been doing that for about 15 years. And we kind of stopped there.
Thank you so much, guys, for participating in that. So as the event suggests, it's the conversation live. We're going to be having lots of interesting conversations. Some of them will be heavy, just want to kind of warn you. Some of them will be more lighter and more, everything is all about empowerment, but just wanted to let you know that some of them will be quite heavy and, information heavy, okay? All right, so without further ado, guys, we're going to go to the first panel. And this one is quite a heavy one. It's all about, surviving domestic abuse and moving forward. I am going to start by inviting our wonderful host, Sia, who is an all-round creative. She's a presenter, she's a producer. She's known for her involvement in the wonderful Back Chat. Yeah. And she is also now a presenter of her own show as well. So welcome Sia to the stage, everyone. Okay. And next. Next up, we have the wonderful Mary Kemi. She is a psychologist and a social worker who focuses on things like the impact of trauma, recovery, and community. Without further ado, guys, let's welcome Mary Kemi to the stage, guys. Next up, we have the wonderful Maisha. She is a whole powerhouse. She is an internationally recognized speaker. She's an award winner. She's a powerhouse in social enterprise, recognized for her work around violence against women, mental health, and healing. Welcome to the stage, Maisha, please. And last but certainly not the least, we have the wonderful Magda in the house as well. She is the social value manager at WPS. She works on high-impact social value and sustainability initiatives in London and the South, and she's all about resilience, inclusion, and leadership. Clap for her, guys. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over to the wonderful Sia, and she's going to host the lovely panel.
Thank you, Mo. Hi, everyone. How are we doing? Hi, nice to meet you, Mo. Never speak about Backchat ever again. I know, you're right. Lovely to meet you guys. Just before we start the panel, I'll just give a brief bio about who I am, why I'm here. So, yeah, as Mo said, my name's Sia. I've been in the creative space for, too long. And started on Backchat. Now I have a show called Off the Record, which is an interview-based platform. But a lot of people know me for sharing my story. I was married to my abuser, who I also have a child with. She's now 5. And I experienced physical, financial, and emotional abuse from him, which I fled when I was pregnant, which I shared my story at the last event, actually. And so I am 5 years on, healthy, happy, doing amazing, looking great, feeling great. And yeah, I thank you. And I take pride in being able to share how I got to that point with others. So this panel is about moving on from abuse, and hopefully you guys will get some great tips and information on how to do that. Yeah? Great. So Maisha, we're going to start with you. Just tell people a little bit about who you are and why you're here today.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Maisha Suma. I am an international award-winning speaker, and I'm also the founder of an online platform called She Walks in Value, which looks at empowering women and girls to find their value, to invest in it, and then to walk in it. I'm also a survivor of domestic abuse, hence why I'm so passionate around this conversation that we'll be having today. I've also been listed within the 50th most inspiring black women in the UK, and my work really looks at, at advocacy and helping women and girls, not just around their recovery and rebuilding their lives after domestic abuse, but also empowering women in leadership and helping them to not only find their voice, but to use it and to create the change that they want to see. So yeah, it's a bit about me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So before we get into it and start talking about how you moved forward, could you just give us a little bit about the the abuse that you experienced, and then what steps you took to move forward from that abuse?
Yeah, so unfortunately my experience is quite long, so I'm going to try and summarize it in as much, but I'll be around during the lunch break, so if you have more questions, feel free to ask then. But my experience, unfortunately, when I was as young as 5, I was sexually abused by a close family friend. So from very young, I already started having a lot of insecurities. I became very hypersexual from very young because of that experience, but I couldn't tell anyone because, again, you're 5, you're still figuring things out. You don't know what's right, what's wrong. But that carried with me for a very long time. So I grew up really thinking that my value and my worth was just in my body, because growing up where I grew up in the Netherlands, I'm originally from Sierra Leone, so in West Africa, but I grew up in the Netherlands, and I faced like a lot of bullying, a lot of racism, etc. So I grew up feeling very insecure, and because of that, just feeling like that voice was taken away when I was outside, but then inside, where it was supposed to be my safe space, feeling like that was also taken away. Then we had fled to the UK years later, and again, I was in relationships trying to find that missing piece, because I grew up not with my father, unfortunately, when we'd moved to the UK. So this left a real big gap inside of me. So I was always seeking for that love. I was also seeking for that fulfillment that I would find in these relationships, but they couldn't fill what was empty. It just made the hole go deeper and deeper. And because I was really vulnerable, I didn't know myself, I didn't know my worth, I didn't know what my boundaries were or my standards. So I would almost walk into these relationships, not even walk into them, I would fall into them. Because I, didn't know what I would be getting myself into. Just anyone that would show me a bit of attention is what would literally capture me. So fasting forward, when I was about 16, I met this guy. I thought he was Prince Charming, especially because my other relationships had failed. And I thought, okay, finally, this is it. This is what I've been searching for all along. This emptiness that I feel inside, this low self-confidence that I have about myself. I finally am able to find someone that can bring that out of me. But actually, things started to go downhill very quickly. Again, at the start of the relationship, I was quite open around my boundaries. Though I didn't have any by that stage, I started to kind of form some things where I was like, this is a no-no and this is a yes. And fasting forward, it started to become a lot of emotional pressure. So when we talk about, just trigger warning, rape, we sometimes just focus on the physical aspect of it and the sexual aspect of it, but we don't focus on the emotional aspect of it. So before I was physically raped, it was that emotional rape where it was like being gaslighted and pressured into thinking that you're ready. And for me, when I was in that relationship, I was still a virgin. So for me, that was something, again, being West African, just the way that I grew up in a Christian household, those were just those values that you would keep until, you're married. And unfortunately, 6 months into that relationship, I was raped by him. That's how my virginity was taken. And it was really difficult because obviously I'd been sexually assaulted when I was 5. And then to go through that in that teenage stage was really difficult. I didn't know who I could speak to about what I had experienced, and not long after that, it started becoming really physical. So, they will hit you and say, oh, it won't happen again. And you believe that because you're thinking, surely someone that's loved me for these period of months can't become this monster, or this idea that we have through dramatized TV and series. But then it only got worse to the point that I was now getting threatened to be stabbed, to being killed. And I was still in sixth form at that point. So it was almost being raped, being attacked, not just behind closed doors, but in public. In a shopping mall, being punched in my chest, my top is ripped. There's literally blood dripping down, or almost being thrown off the 20th floor from an estate in a boiler room. So I had quite a few near-death experiences from almost being thrown into the river. And sometimes when we think about these scenarios, we think it might happen in another country, or it might happen to someone that's much older. But I was only still 18 because I had just turned 17 when I got into that relationship, not far from it. It really affected me physically, the sexual abuse that I went through, the financial. I used to have literally a tenner in my Air Forces, because if I didn't give him that money, then it would become physical. I would get choked out. And then there was that pressure of trying to get me pregnant at a young age, because for those who know, the family court system is really difficult and very challenging, especially when you have a child with someone. And his idea was well, I'm going to try and get you pregnant so that you could never leave me. So even the pharmacy that I was going to, I'd exceeded my morning after pills that I could take because of the constant rape that I was experiencing. So that went on for a while until in March 2017 when I almost got murdered. And then a neighbor saw across the from her, where she was in her estate, and then that's how I was able to leave.
Wow. Yeah. First of all, well done for getting to where you are now. It takes a lot. I think people don't understand the strength, the mental strength that it takes, and also community to get through a situation and what you're describing. What would you say was the biggest challenge you had when you were trying to leave this situation, or even let's say navigating life after? What would you say the biggest challenge you had, whether that's mentally, emotionally?
I would say mentally, because they gaslight you and manipulate you to a point where you think their worth is only in them and with them. So you literally think you're in this dark tunnel and you're never getting out. And I think for me, it was like, is there life after domestic abuse? Is there life, especially as a young person? It's having this mindset that like your life is almost done, because at that point I was 18, and I think for me it was like, even when I was almost murdered, then it was like, I haven't really lived life. Like, I haven't been able to be a young person. I've literally lived in survival mode. So it was really difficult to mentally accept that I wasn't loved by this person. I think that's what really broke me, because though I was going through these experiences in and out of the relationship, there was times things were good, but then majority of the time things were really bad. But you try to hold on with your faith, with your hope that you will get that version of them. And I think for me, it was just really difficult to mentally come to terms with that. This person does not love you, because someone who loves you doesn't do those things. And I think for me, that was the first time that I realized that, you know, I've been in this relationship for almost 2 years, and I've been with someone that doesn't love me. And that was really difficult because, again, I had made this person my everything. And then it was also about finding myself, because who am I without that person? Like, what do I like? What do I like to wear? What do I like to do? Because, you know, I was really distant from my friends, family, etc. That spark that I had was just all gone. So it was just really about finding myself, finding my worth, and also having that faith in myself to know that the faith I had in that relationship now has to be transformed into my own personal life, and really believing that I can rebuild my life, which I have been able to do today.
Amazing. Thank you for that. What would you say are the 2 tips that you would share that helped you move forward from or in your healing journey? What are maybe not even tips, but yeah, 2 points of advice that have really helped you?
I would say be real with yourself. I think for me, the first step in my healing process was having to put a mirror in front of my face and literally tell myself that I'd been raped. That was very difficult for me because I grew up very popular, very loud, very bubbly. So I really struggled to accept what had happened to me. And I think the first step of moving forward is accepting what's happened. Not accepting that you would allow this to happen again, but accepting the fact that this has happened to me, but it doesn't have to remain what has happened. I was able to figure out that, do you know what? Yes, I've gone through these experiences throughout my life in this relationship, but there is still life after domestic abuse. If I'm still breathing, I'm a Christian, which is the foundation of what I do and who I am. And for me, it was like, if God has allowed me to survive that and all those other near-death experiences, surely there's a purpose for me. Surely there's a reason for me to keep going. So I did exactly that. I really separated myself from things that were no longer adding to me, that wasn't adding to the woman that I was daring to become. Because it takes a lot of confidence. It takes a lot of self-belief to really take yourself out of that gutter and to really believe that something can come out of your life. And I did just that. And then I started to add the positive things. So I spent a lot of time with myself. I think sometimes the mistake that women make after leaving an abusive relationship is entering into the next one to try and find safety and refuge. But your safest place is yourself. And once you protect that and once you invest in that, no one can just come in because they understand the value that you hold and they know that they just can't enter. Not everyone can enter into certain shops that sell like diamonds and these expensive gold rings. Why? Because the value of entering in there is expensive. So it's guarded. They have there's one in the area that I live in. It's like 1 door, 2 door, 3 door, and they have securities. And that's literally how I guided myself. And not that I'm closed up to anyone else. I'm still single. But at the right time, I will be blessed with a man that will value me, that will love me, and that will really live out what God has called a man to do beside you. So it's about protecting yourself and knowing when to open that door to someone that holds that value. And, you know, I would say just believe, hold on to the community around you, believe in yourself, because it's something that no one can give to you.
Yeah.
It's something that I had to find within myself to really allow that to be rebirthed. And a quote that I usually use that says that broken crayons still color. And the reason why I use that is because when you break a crayon, whether it's at the middle of it or the end or the start, it still colors. And that's how I had to see myself, to believe that though I've gone through experiences that have tried to break me, I'm a crayon inside and I can still color this world differently. So,
I love that analogy. That's an amazing analogy. I think something that you're speaking to is showing that healing is not linear, especially when you experience, I guess, any form of DA or DV. And I think one thing I learned, and something that surprised me during my healing journey, was that you can actually have boundaries. Like, for so long, when you go without having those boundaries, you almost are led to believe, as you mentioned, that you don't have any. But what would you say surprised you the most in healing?
The strength that I have.
Yeah.
Like, I think when you're in that place, you feel so weak. You believe you're so weak, and then you realize that your strength isn't in what you wear and how you look, but who you are on the inside. And that's something that no one could put a price on or take away from you. And I think the woman that I became, because again, I had gone through my experience and I just had gone to university. So imagine having to go to the police station, going through the justice system, trying to reconnect with your friends, yourself, your faith, finding out everything again. It was like starting from scratch. But this time I knew that I was starting in the right way and getting to the right direction. So I think what shocked me the most was to find that lioness that's inside of me, finding out that light that I have inside of me, and that I can literally create the change that I want to see. And I have been doing that over these years. Next year makes it 10 years since I've been running She Walks in Value, and the things that I've been able to achieve, you know, to tell my story, but also the women and girls that you meet on this journey just shows you that sometimes it only takes one person to share their story, and that one sharing allows you to empower a village, a generation of girls that will know their value because you chose to find yours. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And just before we round off with you, just one line for somebody who may be struggling, is trying to flee an abusive situation. What would you say?
I would say safety first. I think sometimes people just say leave and get out, and that's exactly what the survivor wants to do. But it's about being safe and reaching out to organizations, charities, people you can trust who can guide you safely through that. Because, like you said, healing isn't an easy journey. Even when you get out, that's actually when the real healing starts, because it's you versus you. But if you lean into the right people, the right community, your faith, whatever it is that works for you, then you will get to that end. And I think this panel will show, and throughout today, that there is life after domestic abuse. So don't remain where you are. There is a future ahead for you. And there's people like ourselves and those that you might meet on your journey that believe in you and that want to help you get there. So take that first step, but do it safely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Amazing. Thank you. I think so. With my show, we've been talking about domestic abuse predominantly in relationships, intimate relationships, but there is abuse that exists in different formats, in different relationships. So we're going to pivot a little bit with Mary and pivot to speaking about spiritual abuse. So Mary, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today.
Hi everyone, my name is Mary. I am a qualified social worker, and I have also been in a toxic church for several years. And on my journey of healing and recovery, I realized that not many people was actually speaking about the implication of spiritual abuse. And so I became more interested in understanding how spiritual abuse can affect you. I became more interested in trauma, and I'm here today to be able to just share my experience, and just with the hope that somebody feels that they are seen and heard.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So there may be some people out here that don't know what the definition of spiritual abuse is or what that looks like. Can you give us a little bit of insight?
I would say that spiritual abuse is actually a lot more common than we think. And essentially, it's when religious beliefs or spiritual practices are used in a way to manipulate someone or group of people. It can be used as a way to control, to humiliate people, or to shame people. And spiritual abuse can happen within any religion.
Thank you so much. So tell us about your experience. I know you mentioned that you were in a toxic church. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit about that experience and some of the things that you experienced that helped you to identify that it was spiritual abuse.
So interestingly enough, when I started going to this church, I thought I enjoyed it. I thought that I was around like-minded people who wanted to grow in their faith, but I had no idea that beneath the surface, there was a lot of control, there was a lot of manipulation. So it was as I became more involved in the activities, there was a heavy pressure that in order for you to be closer to God, you needed to be closer to your pastors. And so that meant that you ended up oversharing anything and everything with a pastor or a leader, even things that were inappropriate. And so that then led to a lot of control, to the point where literally every area of my life was being controlled in some way, shape or form. So whether that was where I lived, what I wore, my finances, friendships, romantic interest, travel within the country or outside of the country. And if I didn't obey what the pastor said or what the leader said, then it would lead to shame. That could be in private or publicly. There was an instance where I was told I was wearing too much makeup at an event, and because I didn't dance at an event, I was shamed for it. There was another instance where my friend organized a surprise birthday party for me, and I had no involvement with the planning whatsoever. And at the end of the day, the very day of my birthday, the pastor decided to call a meeting in front of the whole church and essentially shame us because we apparently didn't invite people from the church to this birthday party. And so over the years, it was just more and more control. And it got to a point where I isolated myself from people because I had so much fear that if I was to speak to somebody about anything, someone was just going to report me to a pastor, and that would just lead to some kind of shame. And this was normalized in the church. So it was a thing of if you weren't receiving some kind of care, in quotes, which is actually shame, then it meant that something was wrong with you, you weren't spiritual enough, you weren't good enough. And because this happened for years, over a long period of time, it just ate away at my confidence. In fact, I didn't have any kind of esteem whatsoever. And essentially, because of how normalized that control and manipulation was, it then meant that I was also vulnerable to other relationships outside of the church where control and manipulation was happening, but I wasn't able to, unfortunately, recognize it. And so it was months after I left. Even after I left, I had no idea what had happened to me until when I started hearing other people talk about their stories of how they were shamed, how they've been embarrassed, how they went through control just like myself as well.
That's very, very deep. And I think one of the deepest parts of it is that for people that are in the faith, church is supposed to be the safest place for you. And people hurt people, right? But in essence, if you're there for the right reasons, it should be the safest place for you. When it became unsafe for you, how did you leave that environment? And how hard was it to leave that environment?
It was incredibly difficult to leave because we were taught that if you left the church, then something bad was going to happen to you. And so I was going through internal conflict for almost a year because I was wondering, do I stay in this place? Do I go? But then I also want to make sure that I'm committed to my faith as well. So I was carrying a lot of guilt and just a lot of uncertainty that I just don't know what's going to happen to me if I do leave. And I was talking to a friend one day, she had left actually, and she just said, "Oh, Mary, you know you could leave." And the moment she said that to me, it came to me as a shock because for the longest time, I thought that I couldn't leave and I was really, really scared that something bad was going to happen to me. So I would say that the most difficult part of leaving was actually making the decision to leave. And then in addition to that, after leaving, the other difficulty was then learning a new normal, because then you had to unlearn the healthy behavior, you had to unlearn the control, unlearn oversharing and not putting boundaries in place. And it was also an incredibly isolating time as well because the friends that I thought I had, they no longer spoke to me. The leaders that I thought I could trust, they no longer spoke to me as well. And again, because of the heavy teachings that was in that church, that when you do leave, such people are disloyal and they're really painted with a negative paintbrush to the point where some people were called evil. I was even called crazy for leaving. So it was a very difficult time of trying to just understand who I was, trying to rebuild myself again. It was, incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you build your life around these people, right? Something that I think I always think about is church hurt and how people navigate their relationship with Christ after being hurt by the very people that say they worship Christ. How did your relationship with God change, if it did, after you left that church?
I would say that I thank God that my relationship with God was actually quite grounded because I knew that there was a separation between God and his character versus people. And I was able to recognize that people aren't perfect. People are carrying their own traumas, and unfortunately they bleed onto other people because they haven't taken that journey to heal. But when you look at the character of God, God is loving, God is caring. In fact, God is a God of justice, and he doesn't want to see the the people that he loves are going through injustice. And so I was able to make that differentiation that, yes, I had gone through such a terrible experience being in the church, but I know that that wasn't what God wanted for me. God actually desires for his people to be in safe community, in safe relationships where they have choice, where they're able to set boundaries, and that's an environment that's healthy as well.
I agree. I think also we're in this era where as soon as something goes wrong, everyone goes on the internet, right? I went into a black business and they said they don't have any chicken. Oh my God, they don't have chicken. We're in that era, right, where you're kind of scared to step on anyone's toes because you know they're going to go on the internet. And as of recent, I think there's been an influx of, how do I say it? There's an influx of people on the internet talking about church. And I don't really see it with many other faiths, if I'm honest. I see it predominantly in the Christian space, people talking about church. And I don't know how I feel about it, because if it's your experience and it's to help other people, then it should be shared, right? But where's the middle line between potentially deterring people from the faith, but sharing your experience? So I wanted to ask if you ever felt any guilt around wanting to share your experience, and how you, I guess, because you're still in the faith, right? How do you navigate sharing with maybe unbelievers or other people without deterring them from the faith?
Oh, this is very nuanced and it can be very complicated. Essentially, like I said, I make the difference of God is God and people are people, and recognizing that people who are speaking on social media, sometimes you don't really know the intention, or you don't quite know their own healing journey and where they're at in their healing journey. So I kind of would say that I take things from social media with a pinch of salt, because you just never know, like I said, the intention or the place. Some people are venting and speaking from a place of pain and from a place of hurt, and you don't want to also be receiving that pain onto yourself. So I am quite boundaried when it comes to social media content, and I kind of just take what I feel resonates and I just kind of leave the rest. And then also when it comes to sharing my story, the major thing is checking within myself that do I feel safe to share? And also the people or the persons that I'm sharing with, are they receptive enough? Is it safe to share with them? Because sometimes you might also face backlash. You might face shame, you might face humiliation. So it's definitely important to have that check within yourself that, is it okay for me to share? Do I want to share? And it's okay if you actually don't want to share, because everyone is also, on their own individual healing journey. And it's just important that you have that choice and you make the decision at a point that you feel ready to do so.
I love that. I think that's really important. I think sometimes when you experience something, especially if it's traumatic, people expect you to be able to speak about it, and in any setting. And I think you're right, it is about sharing where you're safe. And in talking about safety, what does your healing look like for you now? Like, who are you now as someone who has experienced something traumatic, and moving forward, especially when it comes to faith and that dynamic?
So healing looks like making choices in confidence and not being afraid of consequences. Because once upon a time, I knew what it was like to constantly outsource that ability to make decisions for myself to somebody else. And I would always have that guilt that that's not what I wanted, but because I was obeying somebody else, I just felt like I had to do it. So healing looks like, for me, doing what it is I want to and knowing that I have the choice to be able to do that. And healing also looks like recognizing that I have value to give regardless of who is in the room. And it's also healing for me to be able to help others recognize the value in themselves as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause for Mary? Thank you so much. Great. So we're going to keep moving. And we're going to move forward onto something that I think is really, really important. I think when we talk about domestic abuse and trying to flee domestic abuse, as Maisha mentioned, people flippantly always say, why don't she just leave? Or why don't they just go? Or why don't they go to this place or that place? But there are so many factors that make it difficult, especially if you have children. As I mentioned, I had a 7-year-old at the time, and I was also pregnant. And one of the services that made it amazing and so helpful was an IDVA, who's an independent domestic violence advisor, who navigated on my behalf with housing, with the police, and with all the services that are supposed to support you. So if they work in sync, then you get a result like mine. But if they don't work in sync, then you have someone that potentially falls for the gap and is unsafe. So we're going to speak to Magda, who is a domestic violence lead. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Was.
I was.
So yes, Magda, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Just tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're here today.
So my name is Magda Gonçalves. I did work in domestic violence case management for over 10 years for local authorities and housing associations across London. However, currently I look after social value, which is essential corporate social responsibility, where big organisations give back to the community, and that includes looking after initiatives to bring young people into work, supporting charities, organisations, and so forth. But obviously, the reason why I'm here today, and it's such a pleasure to be here today alongside such inspirational women, is that I would like to sort of give something back of the experience I've had over the years managing domestic violence cases in housing. And one thing that has been sort of mentioned today is the variety that it can sort of present itself. Not only it would be partner to partner, you can have parent to children, particularly as people get older. I've managed a lot of cases where you had older children, adult children abusing elderly parents. How do you navigate that if they're the main source of sort of caring support? Again, things like if there are vulnerabilities in the household, neurodivergence, language barriers. For example, I moved to the UK when I was 17 to study from Portugal. My parents are from Cape Verde Islands. And in my culture, domestic abuse is normalised. It's not even questioned. It's normalised. So something that has presented itself many times in the cases that I have managed here in the UK is how do you crack through culture? Normalisation. If somebody is looking to flee, what does the family think about the situation? Is there enough support if they are to leave with the children? Are the children settled? Are there support networks essential for the children if they are neurodiverse? Finances. How easy is it to detangle from somebody who might be your main financial sort of foundation? So from a housing perspective, like you said, we work in partnership with other organisations, and some of the barriers that I did find back in those days is really transparency and the ease of communication, making sure that nobody is working in silos, because your housing officer might be trying their best to find you alternative accommodation. Your IDVA might also be trying to liaise with the police officer, making sure she's kept up to date with how the case is progressing. Somebody else needs to keep tabs on the perpetrator. Who's looking after, where is he? Who's making sure the family is safe? And then again, emotional attachment, such a massive thing. And something that I kept seeing again and again and again is, realistically, an abuser is not an abuser 24/7. There are good moments. So there will be an attachment to that person, and there will be that, like has been mentioned today, that willingness and that faith to believe, right, this time they are going to be better. And that brings people back in. And realistically, that's all chemical. That's chemical in your brain. You are conditioned to wanting that response. And the person that is causing you pain is also your source of comfort. How do you navigate that? So one thing that we always did in terms of referring for support is really counselling. You do need a neutral party, somebody neutral, not family sometimes, not friends sometimes, somebody who doesn't really have any direct connection with yourself, but understands the cultural aspect that you're involved in. Imagine English is not your first language. You have a particular religion that you follow, that your family follows. So these are all those different blocks that as a housing provider you need to be aware when you're managing cases.
I think you've highlighted some really key things that, unless you work in that industry, sometimes it's not even a thought that crosses your mind. Something I wanted to ask is, for people who are like maybe neighbours or friends or just in general, or housing professionals, what would you say are warning signs to know that, maybe something isn't right here, maybe there's some abuse happening here?
There are a couple of things that we look out for. Number one are, let's say, repairs. Social housing, more often than not, your repairs will be looked after by your landlord. Anyone that goes into your property has a responsibility to, if they see anything untoward, strange marks on the wall, punch marks, marks on the floor, smashed doors, reoccurring repairs. Why is the window broken? Why is the door, why do we have to change the lock 5 years this year? And then again, income officers, what's happening with the rent? Is your claim joint? Do we need to look at your tenancy? Again, another blockage. Sometimes the perpetrator is a joint tenant review. Do you know what to do? So I think the first point of contact from a housing perspective is always speak to your housing officer in confidence and say, can I say something to you? Can you make a note on the system to make sure it's not visible to any other tenants or any other person in the household? And they can do that. So that to make sure information doesn't sort of dissipate accidentally and you're safe.
Yeah, I agree with you. Funny enough, my 9 to 5 is housing management. So I'm currently dealing with quite a few domestic abuse cases, and what you're saying is absolutely right. I think one of the things I would love to highlight as well is it is really important that before you sign a tenancy with someone that you are 100% as sure as you can be that you want to be in a joint tenancy, because it gives both of you equal legal rights to the property, whether you're the victim or he's the perp.
Yeah, it does. However, bit of 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
We'll sort of wrap up. But there are legal remedies.
Yes.
There are injunctions. There are exclusion orders. But you have to be brave enough to go through the process. And another thing, you can actually go and apply by yourself for a non-molestation order, which is an injunction to stop that person from coming near you. Some of these legal documents, they look a little bit complicated, but to be honest, if you have some support, you can actually do it by yourself, and you can do it urgently within 24 hours and have that person stop from entering the property for a period of time. Some of these documents have power of arrest, especially if this person has been physically violent towards you as well. So there are legal remedies, even if you find yourself on a joint tenancy, or even if you don't have a joint tenancy but you're married.
Yeah.
Because marital law supersedes tenancy law. But again, there are remedies. So don't feel disheartened for that reason. And obviously, if you in social housing, if you have a long-term tenancy or a tenancy that is a permanent home, there are also you can terminate that tenancy for both of you if the council will issue a new one. So there is always a way out. And I think that's, we haven't got much time. What I want to leave you with, 100% strengthen your mind. Be aware that you are a construct of your environment and your culture and everything that made you the person that you are today. And sometimes our vision can be a little bit warped because of that. So do find somebody who understands your cultural context to support you mentally, because like we've heard today, once your mind is in the right place, you see no blockages. You can just leave, okay? Plan properly, finances organised. If you need to have money stashed aside, nobody needs to know. Yeah, nobody needs to know, so that you can leave and you're safe with your children, okay?
Thank you so much, Magda. Let's give her a round of applause. Perfect. You guys got some good information today, this morning? First panel? Yeah, thank you so much for being here with us, guys, today. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. A round of applause for them, guys.
Okay.
We have time for 2 questions. So when you're ready.
Okay, anyone got a question? Yes. 1 second.
Hello. Has any of you all experienced violence using AI? Because this is a big thing at the moment about, and I didn't know whether that has come into your lives.
That is a really, really interesting question, because AI is on the rise, right? Can you give me a little bit more in terms of like an example of how someone would use AI? Okay. 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 Add to it. Okay, 1 second.
I was just going to add, with the AI world, is Grok is a really good example of how it's been used. The first 24 hours, over 30,000 images of women and girls and children were uploaded and put into sexual positions. I came across a case recently in Waltham Forest, actually, where a young boy blackmailed a young girl by using very innocent pictures and selfies of her and put them into different sexual positions using AI, and said to her, if you don't do these things, then I'll be sharing this with everyone. Luckily, she kind of did come forward, but many young women will be blackmailed and experience that. So when we're talking about the world of AI, it is those falsifying images, documents, and I know we all think we can spot them. I don't know if anyone's ever tried the challenge of trying to spot the difference between an AI image and a real image. I've obviously got a lot of time on my hands. But I think the important thing to recognize is it's another tool to now use as abuse. So I think when we're talking about that, that's why I just want to elaborate. It is very much in real time happening. And while tech is great, it is definitely a new tool that is being used again and again to abuse women and girls and children as a whole.
Just one more quick question, please, if we can. Me too. Any questions? Okay.
Can I just say something really quickly to that? I think something that I've got a teenager. My eldest is going to be 16, and as much as I would like to think that I'm a good mum and I'm aware of things, we're starting counselling so that I understand how to communicate better with her. And I think it's so important to open space for communication where somebody is being a victim of something like that, which is quite scary. They feel comfortable to go to somebody that they trust and say, gosh, look what's happening, what do I do? Whether it's a parent, whether it's an auntie, whether it's a teacher, but you have to create a space where anyone, or especially young people, feel that they can and they won't be ridiculed. So I think it's just taking a leaf out of my own book, because I don't speak her language. I need someone neutral to help me. So yeah.
Thank you so much for all your insight. Thank you to our panelists. Round of applause for them, please. We have some new faces in the audience. Hi, everyone. My name is Mo, and I'm your host for today. I just want you to turn to your neighbor and just say hi to them, because we have some new faces with us. Just turn to them and say hi. How are you? Hope you're not too warm. We're going to take a 5-minute break just to let you guys, relax a little bit and get some air. And then we're going to come back and we're going to go straight into the second panel. And whilst you're mingling, guys, the hashtag for today's event is YLCT, the Conversation Live TC Health. Next panel. Obviously, the first panel was a bit heavy. We had to give you that insight into, domestic abuse and how, bad it can get, because it sort of lays the foundation for the rest of the event. This panel, it's a bit lighter. It's all about building healthy relationships. So we've spoken about what unhealthy can look like, and hopefully this will give you an insight into what healthy looks like. So hopefully you'll be empowered to make better choices as well. So without further ado, guys, we have our wonderful host in the building. Her name is Destiny. She's a speaker, youth mentor, and founder of Homecoming Circle. She's all about healing and empowerment. She's also very passionate about neurodivergent children, and she's all about creating safe spaces for the building of voices and self-confidence. Without further ado, and with a wonderful round of applause, can we welcome Destiny to the stage, please? More claps, please, guys. Encourage her. And next up, we have a fellow curator, one of my favorite people in the content creation space, previously known as CDB, now CDJ. She's a content creator, she's an entrepreneur, she's a host, she's into social enterprise. She hosts various conversations that people may shy away from in terms of it's not popular, but she has very, very important conversations on the internet. She is our internet big sis. With a round of applause to the stage, please, Courtney Daniela. Okay. Next up, we have the wonderful Tasha Bailey. She's a therapist, she's an author, and she's a content creator. She's all about mental health and, speaking about modern womanhood. She's all about healing and wellness, and she's all about championing women individually and through collaboration. Without further ado, to the stage, please, Tasha Bailey. Okay. We got some powerhouses for you guys. And last but certainly not the least, another fellow curator and someone I consider sis, the wonderful, beautiful, Sincerely Owasa is in the building. She's a lifestyle curator who is also not shy, who's not afraid to shy away from, important conversations. She's built almost a cult following online. To the stage, please, Sincerely Owasa. Okay, I'm going to hand over to the wonderful Destiny, and she's going to be hosting this panel for us.
Hello, hello. There you go. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Good? Can we get a little bit more energy, guys? How's everyone doing today? Come on. Yeah, good. My name is Destiny. I'm your host for today, and I'm going to be talking about rebuilding love and relationships. But before I start, who in here has played Jenga before? Anyone play Jenga? Oh, I love Jenga. You know those little blocks that you build, and then you take one out and just go, yeah? Okay. So you know how it works. You pull one by one, and somehow the tower keeps standing until it doesn't, okay? I love Jenga, and someone who is neurodivergent myself, I see things in patterns, colors, and visuals. It makes life a lot easier. As you can see, I love colors, and the more, the better, okay? Each color represents a layer of what we call Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, if you don't know who Maslow is, Maslow was a psychologist that put a theory. In order for you to live a truly fulfilled life, you must have these needs, okay? From the basics like food, shelter, all the way up to purpose and meaning. Now, the interesting thing with my Jenga block is that I'm going to show you what happens when those things get pulled. Starting from the age of 9 years old, my foundation looked a little bit different, okay? So let's play. I'm going to show you how it starts. So we have a mother. We have a father, okay? And I also had my brother. My brother was 5 years younger than me. I was 8 years old when my grandma, my granddad, asked me, would you like to come to the UK? As a child who watches a lot of Disney and Cartoon Network, of course I want to come to the UK. Of course I want to meet David Beckham. Of course I want to meet the Queen. And of course I want to eat, croissants and crumpets and tea. We don't have that in Indonesia. We have rice and fried eggs and satay, okay? So I wanted a different life. I also had my cousins, as well as my grandma and my grandpa. And these were my family. So that was my basics and my foundation of my family. However, I didn't know the cost of my life when my grandparents said, come to the UK. Because actually, even though my mum brought me here, after a month, she left. And my dad never came. And my brother also didn't come. So that is how I started my life at 9 years old, with just my grandma, my grandpa, and that was my family. I'm gonna put these blocks to the side for a second, because no, they're not dead. They weren't gone. I was gracefully giving up for a better life in order for me to come to England and just have a better future. I was too young to understand what that means. I just thought, I'm going to go on holiday, I'm going to come back again, I'm going to go on holiday again, and I'm going to come back. But actually, it was a permanent decision that I had to make at the age of 9. So I also had more than just the yellow blocks, because we now have health. We have a good health at the age of 9 because we're very active. I also had a lot of hobbies. I loved dancing. That was my first love. I loved singing. I loved marching band. I love scouts. I love football. I love all kinds of sports. So hobbies gave us a lot of discipline, especially from martial arts, because it taught us that if we stick to the game, we will win. I loved winning, and I loved achieving things. It's really hard when I had to adjust to all these things, but in a different country, because I had my set of life already in Indonesia with all my friends, with all my family, with my school friends, and now I've got to learn a new language. We didn't do so bad, you know. We've got the basics, like the health, we've got the hobbies, we've got the discipline. But at 18, I became homeless. So there was no shelter, there was no food, there was no clothes. My grandma's house turned into an international student's house. So during the summer, after I finished uni, I came home and I said, hey, Mum, you right? She's like, mm-hmm. And I was like, that was weird. Okay, let me just go up to my room and let me put my stuff down. I opened my cupboard. I opened all my drawers. Someone's stuff was in it. She didn't tell me. And she's like, well, you're 18 now, you're an adult, go sort yourself out. Wow. That was my first day of adulthood. It was quite an experience. You know, my grandparents gave me the best life that they could. Because they're not my first set of parents, they weren't really there. They were there, but they weren't really there. So my blocks didn't really build much after that. However, I quit uni after I became homeless, and I was in a long-distance relationship. After 4 years, again, I had to rebuild everything again. So it looks like we kind of went back to square one all over again, because I just had to keep rebuilding after all these experiences that I just didn't know how to handle. At 23, this time 10 years ago, I had decided, you know what, I'm just going to pick up the courage and build myself up, because I know this is not my portion, this is not my story, this is not what I was meant for. And I knew that depression was not a sickness. I was missing something. And I didn't know what I was missing, because I didn't have much compass in life, okay? So I decided to build up my self-esteem. After I built up my self-esteem, that gained my confidence, and also it allowed me to forgive, because forgiving means that we can rebuild a new life again. And finding the confidence means that I can start a new life. We can start a new beginning. We can start a new chapter. And that made me feel really good in life, because now we found a place and a sense of belonging. And belonging was so important to my life because then it gave me a sense of achievements. And the achievements in my life, after 23 of deciding that mental health was going to be my path, I also found myself working with children in neurodivergency because I saw myself not only in them, but I understood that they needed exactly what I needed, which was constant care, support, pure-hearted energy just around them. And the authenticity finally became a sense of home for me. Now, that taught me a whole new meaning of life because I then found my community. Young Ladies Club is one of them because if only they knew that this time last year, I was rebuilding my life in complete stillness, in complete obedience, and they had no idea I was completely rebuilding from scratch, only for a year later for them to say, hey, Desti, would you like to host our event? I had no idea I was going to do this because I didn't have no content, I didn't have nothing in terms of movements because I was so depressed. Rebuilding. But mentorship saved me. Got these two young girls right here sitting in front of me, and they're my mentees, and they have been my mentees 4 years in a row now. And I've also got sisterhood. And with that, we've got chosen family, we've got friendship, we've got stability, and it all goes up. See, this one's emotional for me because when I met my godparents, Pastor Adeo Moba and Pastor Debbie, they taught me that with purpose, with meaning, and with self-love, you will not only just seek to your highest potential, but you will also become your own home. And I think I was searching for home in everywhere but myself. So self-love was the most important thing that I had to... Sorry, my love. No problem. Thank you. Sorry, guys, I'm going to have to rush this one. But anyways, after my godparents had introduced me to all these experiences and spoke life into me and finally actually made me realize that the home within you was always there. It just required somebody to really see you and understand. But I just want to close this one off with my Jenga at the top because none of this would be possible without God. And when I found God, everything changed for me. So I want to reintroduce myself, guys. My name is Desti D. I'm a motivational speaker. I am a youth mentor. I am a testimonial storyteller. And today I am so excited to introduce the lovely panelists here beside me. We got Sincerely Augusta, we've got Courtney Daniela, and we've got Tasha Bailey. Thank you, guys. All right, so let's start with, do you know what? Let me just move my chair to the front a little bit. Here we go. Tasha, tell us a little bit about yourself, lovely. So, what are some of the signs that a person's confidence or identity is being eroded within a relationship?
Okay. So I'm Tasha. I'm a psychotherapist, content creator. I have a platform called @realtalk.therapist where I share self-love, wellness tips. And in terms of that question about confidence being eroded,
Yeah.
I think it's about seeing yourself starting to shrink, seeing yourself apologizing for existing, seeing yourself apologizing for others, like over-apologizing. And one thing that I do notice is that kind of hypervigilance for emotions. So maybe it's that, as soon as someone walks into a room, you're wondering how are they okay? What do I have to do to kind of fix that, to feel responsible for their feelings? And I think, with a lot of domestic violence, what can happen is an enmeshment where we become quite, the relationship becomes so enmeshed, so glued together that it's really hard to then separate ourselves from the person or separate ourselves from any other relationship. So it's trying to really learn how to be an individual again. and to love and respect yourself in that way, and to see yourself as that individual with your own wants and wishes and desires and feelings.
Thank you. Courtney, tell us a bit about yourself, lovely. And also, could you answer what responsibility do influencers have when discussing relationships with a large audience?
That's a good question.
That's a good one.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Courtney, and as Mo said, I'm the internet's big sister. I literally create content, and also I'm the co-founder of a sisterhood community called To My Sisters, alongside my best friend and soul sister, Renee Mafadon. And we are all about promoting women's wellness, growth, and development through media, events, and experiences. And through the 6 years of doing To My Sisters, it's been a journey of getting to meet so many different women of different stages of life. And a lot of the conversations that come up when we are on a retreat in Bali, or we are, in Tanzania hosting a live show, is around relationships. And I think we've taken it upon ourselves, and I personally, as somebody who has had experience with domestic violence, has come from a background of seeing so many of the amazing women in my life unfortunately be abused. I've taken it as a responsibility to talk to women online about relationships from a place of centering them rather than centering the need to be in a relationship. I think sometimes when we talk about relationships online, it can be around the glamorization of relationships, and we love, who else loves love? I love love, I love when I see my girls pop up and someone's engaged, or someone's having a baby, or someone's booed up, or it's a wedding day. I absolutely love that. But I think sometimes with the conversation online around relationships, it does center those big moments, and we forget about life being filled with other big moments for women, and the fact that they need to be celebrated. They need other kinds of community around them, which can be as, if not more, fulfilling as romantic relationships. And so having those conversations online, I think the responsibility aspect comes from, I am responsible for making sure that a woman that listens to me leaves feeling like she can build the life that she wants, whether that has a romantic relationship in it or not, right? I'm going to give her the education, the tools, and the support that she can get, through a screen, to make sure she can go and build the life that she wants with self-esteem, with all the blocks that you showed us, right? With self-esteem, with community, with wisdom, with purpose, but at the center of that, with her own safety and growth in mind. So that's the responsibility I think we have as creators, giving people a fuller picture of life. Even if you have a niche, making sure that you're helping people remember there's more to life than just this. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful answer. Sincerely. Hello.
You can just call me Owosa. It's fine.
Owosa.
Owosa.
Yeah. Owosa. Tell us a bit about yourself, lovely. And also, what are the biggest misconceptions people have about confident women?
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Cecilia Owosa. I'm a content creator. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I've been featured in Daily Mail, Metro, Netflix, etc. Which is crazy because I just started making videos in my uni room when my parents were telling me to study law, and I hated that degree. Hello, Nigerian parents. But yeah, now it's my full-time job and millions of views, and I'm very grateful. But I think the most important thing for me is to speak to women. That's the thing that gives me the most life. And in terms of the biggest misconception of confident women, I think when we think of confident women, we think of someone who's doing too much. For some reason, I think of Rihanna, especially because I think when Rihanna is confident... Okay, I'll start from this. I remember speaking to a journalist who said that Rihanna, if she's on a magazine, she doesn't sell well in the UK. And obviously race is a factor, but there's also the factor of people feeling quite put off by someone who's so embodied in their body, in their sexuality, in their confidence. And it reminds me of that quote of well-behaved women never make history, of that thing of if you're confident, you have to be quietly confident and demure, and like modesty is such a warped term in our world. And I feel like people think that if you're a confident woman, you have to be quiet about it. But no one says that about the men. Like, if you think about like rappers, like they can't stop talking about how much money they're making, how amazing they are. But as soon as a woman tries to do the same thing, she's like demonized, and people kind of think that she's just a problem. So I think those are the main misconceptions of a confident woman. I think for me, in my culture, being Nigerian, talking too much is seen as a problem as a woman. Like if you have too many opinions, if you have too much to say, you're a problem. But that is part of confidence, of like believing that you have something to say, that you have something to add, and that you're not going to be quietened. I think that's quite important. So those, I think, are the main ones.
Amazing. Thank you. Back to you, Tasha. So, what would you say to someone who keeps blaming themselves for the abuse that they experienced?
I would say that self-blame is a survival technique. It's not the truth. It's not your story. It is what your brain is doing to try to gain control over what's happened. And for a lot of us, it feels easier to blame ourselves than to then say, actually, someone did something that they shouldn't have done. And in the future, I have to then be open to build trust again. That is very scary because we can't control that part. We can't control people. We can only control what we're doing. So I think it's separating that, self-blame is not helpful for us. It's not going to help us grow. It keeps us quite stuck. And it's about learning how to build that self-compassion, that context. You said your system, the Maslow's hierarchy of like, what is it that I need now after what I've just gone through? How do I rebuild my foundations? What is missing? What is going to grow here? That is what we need to kind of be looking at, rather than, why me? What happened? Right? That keeps us so stuck. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Thank you. And thank you for making the reference to my blocks. That makes the ADHD sister so happy. Back to you, Courtney. What are some of the early red flags that people often overlook because they are hoping the relationships will improve?
I mean,
it's the potential for me.
I mean, we could start there. I'm definitely not a relationship expert, though I do have a lot of opinions about relationships. But I think with the potential conversation, I think, we can really see somebody and really believe in who they can be, right? But if they don't want to be that person, they'll never become that person. Right. And so we can then find ourselves falling in love with a fantasy. I think we not only do this in romantic relationships, we sometimes do this in friendships as well, right? Absolutely. We fall in love with the ideal, yes, and we say like we'll stick around to build it into that. But building takes two. It takes, especially when it comes to relationships, it takes two people. And I've seen countless times, unfortunately, women step into situations where they were led to believe they'll be building together with someone, but all the building was then put on them. And because of, their desire to see their hopes fulfilled, they kept building, but that tires you out. So I think a big red flag is when you're left to build something which takes two on your own, right? I think number two, a big red flag for me is words without action. Words can be very sweet.
Very.
Very, very sweet, but actions can prove very bitter.
Absolutely.
And so we have to make sure that whoever is talking to us, whoever is promising us anything, is following it through with diligent action, because that's where the proof actually comes. Can you actually back your chat? Like, can you actually back it? So I think it's important to remember that we are not just being told things, we must observe things. And through our observation, we can really tell the character of a person, right? Somebody can brand themselves in one way. People are branding themselves every day in the way they dress, the things they say, how they show up on that first date. But over time, you discern their character through observation. And so observing and seeing, does that pair up with what you actually have to say? And my last thing would be, A red flag is isolation. Somebody wanting to isolate you away from your community, or making sure that you date in isolation, right? Making sure that your relationship isn't open to the necessary people. Because I am a big believer in privacy, but I think there is a clear difference between privacy and secrecy. And if somebody is making you engage in a relationship with them in secret, it means that the things that are happening to you are going to be far away from people who can actually help you in any situation. So I'm always a big advocate for dating in community, right? Picking the people in your life who you trust, who you can be vulnerable with, who you are safe with, you and your partner can be safe with, but making sure you both have that individually and as a couple. When I started dating my husband, I was very big on, we need mentors, we need accountability, we need community, because if anything is going to go wrong in this situation, or if you're acting crazy or I'm acting crazy, we both need people we can go to be like, hey, we need you to step in, because we're not wise enough to see our blind spots. You know, all of us have blind spots, right? And you cannot see what's behind you. You need people who are standing on the outside, looking in and being like, you know what, I can see where this is going and it's not going to end well. And both of you be able to receive that. Both of you need to be open to receiving that. So for me, a big red flag is when somebody doesn't want the accountability. They don't want the community. They don't want the involvement in anybody else. That's a big red flag. Yeah.
Come on, guys. That's why she's the big sister. Come on. All the gems. Amazing, amazing. Osa, how can we create space for women to make a different life choices without the judgment or pressure? No pressure.
That's such a good question. And, do you know, I have such a wide array of friends. I have trans friends, I have gay friends, I have Christian friends, I have Muslim friends. And as a Christian, I think something that incorrectly has been taught to us sometimes, especially as a woman, is this sort of purity culture and judging other people's life choices and the way they live their lives. And one thing I've really learned is the world judges women on a large scale, right? But one thing we can do to correct that is in our intimate relationships, how am I dealing with my friends and how am I judging or not judging their actions? And one of my friends had an issue where, unfortunately, she wanted to have an abortion. And as a Christian friend, I really had to sit with that and be like, this is her decision. It's not my decision. I can pray for her. I can pray that she's comforted, but it's not my decision to make. And I think that is the essence of not judging women, is allowing people to have their autonomy, and also, as a Christian, hoping that they are surrounded by God's love. Like, that is where everything should flow from, is God's love. But I'm a massive believer of giving women their autonomy. And as someone who loves history, I've seen through history what has happened to women when their autonomy is ripped from them. Nothing good ever happens from it. Even if the motivation is good, the end result is always pain and anguish, and none of those things, I think, are things that women deserve. So in terms of not judging women for their actions, our intimate relationships have to flow from a sense of love, and I think communication as well is really important, and having those open channels of communication, but communication that isn't harsh. I really don't like this whole like, oh, I'm just blunt, that's how I am. Like, no, like, communication has to be based in love. It shouldn't be harsh, it shouldn't be forceful, and it should be kind, but also as honest as you can be without being cruel. I think communication, honesty, and kindness can exist, as well as empathy as well. I think empathy is so important. And empathy for me, as someone who speaks for a living, is learning when to shut up. Like, it's not every day that someone needs to hear what I have to say, and just committing everything to prayer, because God knows the path of that person's life, and just supporting them in their choices. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Thank you so much. Tasha, back to you, lovely. For someone who has experienced emotional and psychological abuse. What does healing actually look like in the early stages?
I would say, like working out the self-doubt, because when you leave any situation, even if it's leaving a job, leaving wherever, you're stuck with this thing of, did I make the right decision?
Right.
Was it the right thing? Because you're still losing something. Even if it's something bad, it's loss, it's grief. So it's that first initial trusting yourself, believing that you made the right decision. It's kind of that. The second thing is working out who you are as an individual now. Who are you as, this person at this particular age, at this particular chapter in your life? A lot has changed, lots have happened. But all of your essence is still there, and it's probably even more right and beautiful. So it's actually working out what is that beauty. It's probably been, having to hide, it's been survival mode for such a long time that it's now rediscovering those parts of yourself. And I'd say the third thing is, sorry, my bad.
I'm hot, sorry, it's my fan.
I think the third thing is finding safety in relationships. I think that can be really, really hard. And I think particularly with domestic violence and toxic relationships, they don't always start there.
Yeah.
Maybe they started earlier on in our childhood. Maybe that's what we knew was familiar. So it's now about learning that healthy love, that healthy relationships, and not just romantic relationships, but friendships, mentors, godparents, that we can have those healthy, safe, predictable relationships. And when we have that, we can then grow. The drama doesn't have to be in the relationship. The drama comes from us and our growth and our process. And with that brain chemistry, whatever we experience as kids or in that relationship, having those other experiences can actually shift our brain chemistry to something where we feel safer and more aware of what feels good and what doesn't feel good and how to kind of navigate that.
Right. Amazing.
Can I
Thank
actually
you.
add on that quickly?
Absolutely,
Sorry.
absolutely.
Because I've actually experienced the latter half of what you were saying. So like I said, in my childhood, I was exposed to a lot of abusive relationships. And it made me swear off relationships entirely. But I think a lot of my healing actually came through my friendships. Right.
Yes.
I also went through the road of trying to find, I guess, comfort in the arms of boys, and then by the time I got to 17, I was like, yeah, forget it.
Same, sis.
Boys
Same.
don't even make sense to my brain. But I think what actually kicked off my healing journey was my friendships with my girls. So I went to an all-girls school, and we're all still friends. We call ourselves Squad, and we used to all sit around the lunch table every lunchtime and kiki about absolutely anything and everything. And now we all show up for each other. We're always there talking to each other. And I think that love from my sisters actually restored a lot of what I needed in my healing journey. It taught me that I was worthy of love, that I didn't have to perform to receive love, to be affirmed, to be taken care of, to be served. And it also gave me a place to serve. And it filled me with so much safety and joy. And I think that then set up the standards and the expectations that I then had for romantic relationships, because I compared it to the benchmark of how my friends had treated me, and they had set such a high standard that it really helped me go into relationships knowing my worth.
Yes.
So it really does work. It really is true.
Sisterhood and standard. You got to slow it down, sis. I'm keeping up with all these notes and these gems. Okay, so what's that? What's one relationship lesson you wish every woman learned earlier in life? Just pick just one. You got to pick one. I know this one's a hard one. But what's the one relationship lesson?
Okay, so I've been in therapy since I'm 34, and I've been in therapy since I was 24, so 10 years. And I'm a big advocate of therapy. That's not what the lesson is, though. But it's made me
Firstly,
really...
34 where?
Thank you. It's made me really obsessed with psychology. And one thing that I've really been learning on my healing journey is attachment wounds and how important and how detrimental attachment wounds can be. So people have said, psychologists have said, that even from 6 months, your attachment style is basically already like embedded into you based on how much attention mummy and daddy were giving to you. And for me, I grew up, my parents are both immigrants. And when they came to this country, they didn't have their papers. And so they were studying Monday to Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday, they were working. And then they were cleaning. My dad used to clean train stations in the nighttime. And then he would do his graduate in the daytime. So when was I seeing mummy and daddy? I was only seeing mummy and daddy on Saturday and Sunday. And then Monday to Friday, they would send me to a childminder. So I only got to see mummy and daddy 2 days of the week. And so when I was growing up, I felt this deep sense of abandonment. And there were a lot of things that happened in my childhood, like abuse and other things, not to do with my family, but unfortunately people who were taking care of me. So in my head, I always felt like I can't trust anyone to look after me. And even mummy and daddy might put me inadvertently in harm's way. That's how I imagined it as a child. And so growing up, anxious avoidant she was there. So if anyone doesn't know attachment wounds, if you're anxious, it's basically stay with me. If anyone's seen Love Island, if anyone's seen Love Island and you're seeing a girl and she's like, oh, how do I get him back? How do I make him stay? That is anxious attachment. That is textbook anxious attachment. And then anxious avoidant is stay with me, actually no, go away. Stay with me, actually no, go away. Because you can't, it's almost like the person can't trust the presence of a loved one.
Stay with me, but I can't stand you.
Well, deep down, there's a deep desperation for love.
Yeah.
But there's a front of, no, I don't need you. That's what it is. And so one thing I think people really should learn is go back to those early days. How were you raised? What was your childhood like? How was mummy and daddy looking after you? Or how was mummy or daddy looking after you? How did that, what lessons did that teach you in the home? And how is that showing up in your relationships? Because for me, if a man didn't text me after 3 hours, I was literally spiraling. I don't know if anyone here has anxious attachment. I would spiral. I would delete him, I would block his number, then I would download it, get it again. I would delete all his chats, and then it was just unhealthy, but I didn't realize it's all coming from somewhere. It's coming from even before I was 1 year old. There's that deep fear of abandonment already. And once I started really working on that, and it's also that feeling of, oh, it's not real. That fear of abandonment. It's it's just history. It's coming from the past. It's not actually factual. That doesn't mean every person who I meet is going to abandon me. It was just I was a product of circumstance. My parents were immigrants. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. That's just how it was. And I think coming to that radical acceptance is very, very useful, especially in relationships. So you don't start doing up spiraling and calling your therapist at 2 a.m. and crazy nonsense. So for me, I think finding out what your attachment wound is or your attachment sign, you can go online. There's loads of psychology, please, reputable. Anyone with letters after their name, reputable. If you go on any of those websites, you can find out your attachment style, and I think it's a massive help when navigating relationships or friendships as well, because this stuff shows up in friendships too.
Attachment styles, and we all want to be secure, sis. Please. 2026, we all want to be secure. Not anxious avoidant, not avoidant anxious. That's a lot, but you really actually spoke to me, because I feel like we live the same childhood. It really does, when you think about it, it really does stem from when you were a baby. Not just when you're a child or when you were a baby, because you know, is mummy here? You start to self-soothe yourself. Yes. And as an adult, you really pick that up. Yes. Oh, sis, I need a one-to-one with you. Tasha, I feel like I need to scoot a little bit to the front, lovely. I know I need to see you. Social media now. What relationship myth do you see being promoted online that concerns you the most? Is there anything you saw on the gram and you're like,
There's a few. I feel like, and not just social media, I think also TV. We're in a state of reality TV, love shows.
I was going to say,
and
reality TV.
Love is supposed to be big and...
Love is blind.
Up and down and passionate. And honestly, I've been married for 3 years.
Yeah.
And healthy love can be really boring. It can be, it's really predictable. It's really reliable. It's really stable.
Yeah.
And that is what healthy love is.
Yes.
It's about that reliability, that predictability. When I first met my husband, well, not when we first started dating, sorry, I was so confused by it. That I would pick arguments because I was so used to having stimulation, drama, chaos. You know, that was my norm. That was my family norm and my pre-relationship norm.
Right.
So why are you not bringing that? Where's the fire?
Where's
Come
the razzle
on.
dazzle?
Right. And it goes back to the attachment styles because that's what my mind was expecting. That's my neural pathway is like there should be drama by now. The drama proves how much love there is.
Right.
So I think that is the biggest thing, and I think that we see it a lot. You know, when we see the big moments on Instagram, when we see, you know, Love is Blind, all these things, we see all this kind of big love, these big gestures. And then to sneak in another one is I think that particularly for certain cultures, particularly for women of colour, I think, is that when there's a breakdown in a relationship that we blame ourselves or that it's our fault. I think there can be something about the responsibilities on the women to maintain a relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that then keeps us quite locked in to things that we shouldn't be locked into. So that's kind of, it's not really social media, but I think there is a kind of definitely a gist of that, particularly within heritage, within family traditions. You know, I grew up in a family where there wasn't many marriages.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that I was first told is make sure you do whatever you can to keep your man, like it's kind of that mentality rather than what is the quality of the relationship, what's happening in the relationship. Is it, you know, is it fulfilling as a relationship, not make sure you maintain it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Courtney says, how can someone tell the difference when a relationship is challenging and one that is becoming healthy or abusive?
Oh, unhealthy.
Unhealthy,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So, how can someone tell the difference between a relationship that is challenging and another one that is unhealthy and abusive?
That's a really good question. I would say, and I would really be interested to hear more of what Tasha would say on it, but I would say really and truly, every relationship, platonic, romantic, is going to come with some degree of conflict and hard conversations, right? But the question is, what does that conflict bring out of each party, right? Sometimes when we get into some kind of disagreement or we've faced a challenge as a friendship group or as a couple, we can suddenly become each other's enemy, right? And suddenly this person will start doing to you things that they haven't done to you before, right? So I think you start to see when something is becoming unhealthy, when it no longer becomes about problem solving, but it becomes about belittling, harming, insulting, making somebody feel shame about what it is they've done or have not done. So really and truly, those things are actually quite unhelpful to really confronting the challenge. And I think within any relationship, it's two people facing a challenge together, not facing each other as if they were the challenge. You know, the actual problem is the enemy. We're not each other's enemy, right?
No.
And so allowing yourself to not become I guess not making the other person an enemy, I think, is a big thing. And the second thing I would say is both of you need to be trying to face this challenge together.
Together.
Do you know what I mean? Things become a bit unhealthy when it's just put on one person to solve the problem. And it goes back to that one-sidedness in relationships, which you just kind of made a nod to around women. Oftentimes when there is a challenge in the relationship, the onus is put on the woman to fix it. Right, because it's a reflection of your worthiness if this relationship fails. But actually, it's both of us. We're a team. Yeah. This is a partnership.
Right.
And so if we're experiencing a challenge, we must face it together. And it becomes unhealthy the moment it becomes one-sided.
Thank you.
Can I add to that, actually?
Absolutely.
So I really agree with that. And I was going to say how conflict is normal in relationships. There should be avoidance of conflict. It's natural. It's normal. No one is born your perfect partner. You're not born their perfect partner. It's about growing together. And in therapists call it rupture and repair. So a normal thing is that there's a rupture, there's a conflict, and together you learn how to communicate, how to meet that person's needs more better. You know, the rupture actually makes it stronger. And when it's really toxic is when the person or yourself responds in ways of criticism, contempt, or the other one is silent treatment. And a lot of that we learn from our parents. So again, it goes back to these early years and really understanding, okay, how was conflict showing up when I was a kid? what was I used to, what was normalized for me, and then for my partner, what is the same thing, and how are we going to do better together? If we're both willing to do that work as well.
Oof, thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. Does anyone have any questions so far for the panelists? They're giving a lot of gems today. Even I'm just here like, I'm forgetting that I'm actually like asking them the question. I'm learning myself. But has anyone got any questions for any of the ladies here at the front? No? I think everyone's taking notes, you guys. I think everyone is really, really taking it all in.
No questions at all? We have time for 2.
Can I jump in on that one?
Of course.
In terms of education for young girls. So I sit on the board of a charity called Strength Within Me, and it's all about domestic violence prevention amongst young people, because the age that a lot of young people are experiencing domestic violence, a lot of teenagers in particular. And I think where we went wrong is removing things like PSHE from schools. Because I remember very vividly being in year 10 and my PSHE teacher, we actually sit, I'm also a governor of my old school, so we ended up sitting on the board of governors together, and I told her this story. And she brought out a tin of beans, and she brought out a condom, and she took the condom and stretched it over the tin of beans, and she looked us dead in the eye. She said, "Don't ever let a man tell you he's too big for a condom." And in that moment, I remember thinking, yes. And I've never forgot it. I've never forgotten it. Like, she was so on business with it, because she was like, you're, probably, to be fair, at that point, we were 14, 15. Some of my peers had kids already, right? So at that point, we might have been having sex already, or she knew at some point you're going to have a sexual encounter with the man if you do. And maybe he's going to try and spin you the lie that he doesn't need to respect your request for protection because, hey, he's too big for it. And if you haven't had that education, if I haven't had that moment at 14, remembering the tin of beans, I might actually believe that. And then suddenly I'm getting an STI, or something's being done to me against my own will. And so I think it's important for us at a very young age, look at the age of children who are watching pornography. It's not like children are oblivious to sex. I know we're trying to maintain their innocence. The internet's already robbed that. So now we actually need to give them the education that they need to be able to navigate the society they're actually in. Right. You asked that question, or someone asked the question earlier about AI, right? They're in a different reality. Their innocence isn't being preserved by technology. So we need to do everything we can to arm them with education from as early as possible. Obviously appropriate, right? The language will evolve as we go, but we need to give them an understanding of the boundaries around sex, sexuality, relationships. It starts off by trying to set a good example, but even if you haven't had that good example, you can have a hard conversation. And so having the hard conversation with children, they never forget it, especially if you put it in terms that they can understand. I'll never forget those tin of beans. Sometimes I'll be cooking and I look at a tin of beans and I think, yeah. Great empowering lesson. So I think it starts with giving people honest advice from school. Yeah.
Just to piggyback off of that, education 100%. One thing I learned through my work on child abuse, I was working with Barnardo's, and they were talking about how I think 1 in 10 children is sexually abused by another child. And I think that's something people don't talk about a lot, is child-on-child abuse. And one thing they were saying that really helps to handle that kind of situation is teaching children about the boundaries around their body parts from early. So also not calling the penis pee-pee, calling it a penis or a vagina, calling it by its biological name, and calling the body parts by its biological names, and teaching them that early, and letting them know, if someone does touch you here, you come and tell me, you come and tell an authority figure as soon as possible, because what usually happens is, one, there's a massive code of shame and silence around not just the body parts, but even in the home, like nobody wants to call it what it is, and nobody wants to say, oh, sorry, we are talking about ladies, but nobody wants to call, breasts what they are, or like the vagina what it's, all of these cute names. And if they have a terrible encounter outside of school, that code of shame is already like embedded, and it can lead them to being silent. So teaching them around about the boundaries of their body from early. I mean, when I was speaking to Barnardos, they were saying as young as 3 or 4, of letting them know this is that. If someone, because unfortunately, and this is one of the, as a victim, it is so hard to talk about, but one of the terrible things about abuse is you cannot prevent what someone else wants to do, unfortunately. But what you can prevent is the code of shame and silence around that child. And so giving that child the language and to feel empowered enough to speak up if something has happened is incredibly important. Or even if something, mummy, this person wanted to touch, that is so important, because even if it didn't happen, they have the language to speak up about it. And that can also stop crimes from happening and make sure that the child is protected.
Thank you guys so much. That was such a wonderful panel. Round of applause as they head back to this. Thank you so much, guys. That was so good. That was wonderful. Wasn't that amazing?
I love your gender.
I hope you guys are feeling educated. I hope you're feeling empowered. I hope you're grabbing all the gems and taking it with you into your lives. Who's a bit hungry? No one's hungry? You guys ate before you came? Okay, well, we have lunch now. Everything's been prepped for you. There's allergy information as well, so do look in case you're allergic to anything. We don't want any people just puffing up in this building. Okay, so when you guys are ready, keep networking, keep talking to one another. Actually, I wanted to share something. This panel was all about healthy relationships, and I came across a very interesting quote recently. And it was a guy who was stopped with his family and their baby. And they asked him, what's the secret to happy relationships? And he said, there's no absolute truth. Truth is told in perspective. So when you're having conflict, always remember that, going with you, that people tell the truth from their perspective. Yeah? Enjoy your lunch.